as we were going through this process, learning each other more, making tough decisions, we were also focusing on our spiritual growth as well, both as individuals and as a unit. And I think that was something that really helped when it got tougher for us, when we were having a hard time agreeing on things. And even when we got to the point where I was like, I'm about to go live this bachelor life in my loft downtown.
So dramatic.
What's happening, people?
What's up, everybody? From the Williams here.
With love.
We're super excited to be back in our chairs.
We're back in this thing.
Chatting it up.
Yeah. So we got an interesting topic. We know the holidays, a lot of people are getting engaged.
Woo-woo.
Yeah, it's happy times, it's good times, but we wanted to share our story. We learned a lot from our engagement period, and we thought that maybe our stories, our memories, the things that we've learned, the lessons that we've learned from our engagement period could be useful for anyone who's seriously dating, even thinking about marriage, or already engaged. This could be cool for you. Let's take you on a trip down memory lane.
Okay.
So the year is 2014.
Mm-hmm.
We are newly engaged.
Newly. Okay, so I should take off my band?
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
I don't think they can see your hands.
Oh, okay.
And they know you married. You're there already. You're good. You can open your eyes.
Oh, sorry. I was getting into character.
I see that. So we're wedding planning.
Wedding planning.
What were our original thoughts when it came to a wedding? Like right when we first started.
When we first started, we thought we were going to have this, not huge, but like 150, 200 people. I was a little girl who watched wedding shows, planned my wedding in my head many a time around what it would look like. And so there were a few things that were non-negotiable for me, or so I thought going in. And so that was very much where I came in. We're not having a buffet. We're having plated dinners. We're going to have some classic wedding colors, black, white, maybe a pop of a color, but they're black and white. We need a venue that is going to be very picturesque. So wherever it is, no outdoor wedding. I don't want to be outside. So like certain things that I just knew that I was like, yep. Just about everything I named was not the plan.
Yeah, we definitely got married
outside. We did have a picturesque.
The food was
in black and white, but
classic
it was a buffet. It was not plated.
That's true. The food ended up on plates.
Wow. What were your plans?
I was thinking simple with a family.
Mm-hmm.
But my family's big.
Mm-hmm.
So the 150 number that you had in mind, like that was my side. It was like 150.
And I was thinking, who paying for more than 150 people?
Mm-hmm. And I was like, it don't have to be super fancy. I'd rather it have the people versus it being so fancy.
And I was all like, nah.
And that was one of the things that we had a little bit of tension around. That was probably
little bit.
Yeah, that was probably the first. Yeah. That was probably the first thing. So whereas you realize it as, it was a really good year with some tense moments.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it as, and I'm a pretty positive person, right? But I remember it as a tougher year for me that had bright spots.
Mm-hmm. I remember the night we got engaged. We had dinner with our family. That was a lot of fun. The very first time we all got to sit down together and really celebrate. Everybody kept picking on me for throwing my hand around.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a moment in memory like I'll always remember. I remember we spent that night together, just the two of us, to also like have some time individually.
To soak in the moment.
Yeah. And so, I mean, away from like our family because we had spent so many hours with them and like building that up. So yeah, I remember those moments. And then we went up to Disney World and we had a whole
the engagement moon. Engagement moon was fun.
It was a great time, and I mean, Disney really took care of us while we were there. We had pins that said "just engaged," and we got chocolate covered strawberries. And we went to one of the parks.
What? I don't remember.
At Magic Kingdom, yeah, they gave us strawberries when we went in there, and then we got a certificate that said we had been there for a special occasion. Yeah, so I mean, that was one of my favorite memories throughout that year. When we went to Asheville with our moms to do the tasting.
That was good.
When I got my makeup done at the mall. It had these huge eyebrows. Yeah, they were so big. Your bachelor party when you called me to come pick you up. Here we bought a house. We celebrated Valentine's Day in our house with no furniture.
No furniture.
We went to the Netherlands.
Okay.
Yes, I don't know. Maybe I need to re-ground you in the joy of the year as well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being really low that year. So like that's where it sits in my mind. Yeah, it was a tough year for me.
I mean, I think that's also interesting too, like how the takeaways are. Like, I don't have that experience of the year. Like, there were challenging moments throughout the year. There was very much like times that I felt tested, tried, but like the stuff that stands out to me are the things that I just named. Those are the moments that stand out to me. I remember like it being really challenging and tough when we decided to call off the engagement, but I also vividly remember like spending so much time that week to myself in my Bible, watching sermons, and being super clear that no matter what we decided to do, like I wanted to go back to school because I felt like that's what God was telling me to do. And so while that was like a really challenging week, I still remember coming out of that feeling like really, really strong, which could be the difference that we experienced, right? Like what was challenging for me felt like it birthed something new. I don't want to speak for you in saying that that wasn't the case or anything like that, but I think it's just like interesting to see how we are having different recollections of the year.
For sure. Yeah. And I think up until that point, like the low moments, that's the stuff that I remember. I remember coming out of that point reinvigorated, focused, understanding exactly what I wanted. But leading up to that, I remember the struggles. Like I remember like thinking like why it was like a lack of control thing for me. That was like one of the first times where I didn't control the situation. And all of these things that were making me upset or controlling my emotions were things that were out of my control, but I felt like I put myself into that situation. Like I allowed myself to be in that place of not having the control. So all of those, so even like when it happened and I would get upset about it, like it was almost like why did I even let myself get into this situation? But I did gain a lot in that process, which is why I don't mind talking about the difficulties, because like when the decision was made, I was so sure, right? I knew exactly what I wanted, and that gave me everything I needed to push forward and make our marriage the best that, and as far as my part, like do everything that I can possibly do, which I think same thing happened on your side, where that's what really allowed for us to have such a strong beginning, right? And just continue to grow. Like, right, we haven't, if you think about where we were as far as maturity in our relationship to the growth that even happened afterwards. It's always been an upward trend. It prepared us, right, for marriage. We learned how to disagree, for one. We also, I think, and you mentioned this as well, about how you had to focus on yourself and understand what you wanted, not losing yourself in the union, but coming as your own person into the union.
I mean, we talked a lot around like our reflections of the year, but we didn't actually talk about like what happened in the year.
You mentioned one of the things that we actually have as a tip, right? Not having so many external voices in your decision making as a unit.
I mean, I think that's the hardest part about getting married. I mean, you are two individuals coming together, and then you individuals bring families with your own backgrounds and traditions and expectations. And so, it's great when it works out that everyone's aligned or everyone has similar ideas around what will happen. It's challenging when it's not, and I think that's what we ran into. Like, they were pretty different viewpoints. And so I think that was like going to be one of the hard pieces for me, of being like, yeah, how do you maintain your voice, maintain your individuality, maintain your values even to a certain extent, while trying to merge together as one.
Yeah, and also, and I'll ask this question, do you feel like giving in on some of those things would have like portrayed you in a particular way to your family?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think there were certain things that didn't feel as pressing. So it was like, okay, like, yeah, we can add in a few more people, or sure, we can change this up or do this with everybody's outfits. Great, not a big deal. But there were other things that I felt like, yeah, like I told them all my life we're gonna have plated meals. So now you're gonna have yellow rice and green beans. Like, I can't go back on that. I just can't. So I mean, I think there's definitely one of those things that felt very much so. And I mean, here's the thing. I've been to plenty of wedding with yellow rice, green beans, and chicken, and had a great time. And so I think that's one of the things that in growing and maturing, I think just like different things exist, right? So to me, in that moment, it was more so about the image. So I think that's the thing where it's like, yep, like, how do I think around shifting or changing, being afraid of the image that's being out there and being comfortable with whatever it is that is actually like us.
Yeah, it just makes you think. I mean, we have the tip of remembering that the wedding is about the marriage, right? And not the event. I think once we aligned, we figured out what was most important to us.
What made our wedding so much fun for me was that it was literally everybody who cared deeply about us. And
us as a unit, right? And
more so, I was saying, like, to the point of like everybody who was there, I didn't feel the need to have a particular image or persona there. Like, if something went wrong, everybody there was like gonna break their neck to try and make it right. And so I think that's what made that day feel really family oriented, for real. Whereas sometimes I think like weddings can be like a big show. And so I think having the small, intimate setting really allowed for us to enjoy the day, enjoy the moment. And it took us, how long did it take before we actually decided we were only going to have 30 people there?
I don't even know, but I know it took a long time and a lot of different iterations of venues and combinations. But to double back to what you're saying about the intimate wedding, being perfect for us, that also fits our personality, right? So you mentioned like the larger wedding sometimes being a big show. There are people who are like extreme extroverts, right? Who like to have fun with large groups of people.
Right.
That's not really either of our personalities, which
like
is why
people who use their wedding as their Beyonce moment, like I am here for it. Like do your thing, have that choreographed dance. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. This was a perfect moment for an 8-count wit joke, but I'm gonna keep it to myself.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I did try to do a choreographed dance, but somebody wasn't down. My dad wanted to have our father-daughter dance to teach me how to Dougie. And like literally we danced to Mariah Carey Hero, and then like in the middle he was like, so can we do the Dougie?
It's too much.
No, Dad, that's a hero.
All the chickies love him. Yeah. But I just wanted to touch on that because I think that's also important in the planning for it to really match who you are and be okay with that.
But I mean, yeah, it was still really hard to tell people who helped raise us or, we spent a lot of time with that, hey, like the way the wedding is going to be set up, like we'd love to celebrate with you in these other ways, but the actual day is not open to everybody.
Yeah. And it was especially tough for me, just how my family is set up. The expectation is that you have something large for everybody to come to. But it also helped me, like, as, we continue to live as a married couple, to understand, okay, what things are important for my house first. And then how do I communicate that with my family? And then realizing that my family's going to be my family. They're going to be like, all right.
Yeah.
We get it. Would we want to do it like we always do it? Yeah. Is it going to change anything about, how we feel about you? No.
And I mean, I think that was like one of the biggest pieces for me. Like the people that really rocked with us, friends, family, whoever, like when they heard, hey, it's not going to be a super large wedding, but we want to celebrate with you in this way or that way. And I mean, we did some stuff that was really quote unquote untraditional. Like I invited people to my bridal shower that weren't invited to the wedding. That's a strict no, don't do that. I wanted to celebrate with my LSs, but we couldn't all be there. They couldn't be in the 30 because it's literally 36 of us. And so it was really a way to think around how can I still celebrate and enjoy this moment with them. They came to my bridal shower. We had a great time. So, I mean, I think thinking around the stuff that is typically seen as like traditional or untraditional, like just do whatever works.
Yeah.
And that worked for us.
Yeah, it was the same thing for me, right? My bachelor party, all my LBs were there. Only one of my LBs was in the wedding. And that was fine. Like, we had a really good time. So we talked about external. We talked about the wedding being about the marriage. What were some other things that we learned along the way that set the foundation for us to be stronger starting our marriage? I know one thing for me, and I can kick it off. I know I asked the question, but it's fresh on my mind. Taking time to date each other. This was something that we learned during that period of time that we took forward in marriage. I remember my younger god sister, we were taking pictures going on a date one day, and she commented on our picture, look at y'all dating like y'all not married. It's like, you got to keep dating, right? You don't get married and then it stops, right? That's how the marriage stops. And I think we learned that, and that also allowed us not to focus so much on the wedding planning every single day, which is another tip of ours.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, thinking about the dating piece, like it was really important for us to have a day off of wedding planning, which I mean is something that we still implement now. Like we try to take a day off of content planning now. And so thinking around how to be able to maintain the intimacy, be in the moment, be present, fully present with with your partner.
Yeah. You have to not become complacent, right? And, love each other as hard and as intentionally as you did to get to the proposal, the engagement.
Yeah, nah, for real. I mean, I think one of the things that really stands out as I'm thinking about those days that we kind of mandated for ourselves were really the frustration that led to those, right? So, like, we was talking every single day. And, like, it got to the point where, like, we would go to work, talk about work. All right, so wedding stuff. And then we was just wedding stuff. I mean, that's how we got to the phase of being like, hey, let's pick a day and let's not talk wedding stuff at all.
That was a great idea. You came up with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a really good idea.
I mean, it was really helpful to also like help us maintain the actual relationship where we were able to actually talk about stuff other than work and wedding. And it was like, yeah, so what else is happening in your life? How are you growing as a person? What's been changing in you? Which I think is part of like why I'm like, dang, I didn't know you were so down that year, because I don't feel like that was the stuff that was coming out. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to think through how we were able to implement some things, which I think led to that year really ending on a high note for us.
Definitely. It was a springboard. It allowed us time to reflect on what was important and also how we wanted to structure our relationship, our marriage. We always knew that we wanted our relationship to be God-centered. And we started to focus on that, especially once we started doing our counseling. That was something that really helped. And all the books that we read 2 of Gary Chapman's books, 5 Love Languages, which we still use to this day or acknowledge or understand.
I mean, the 5 love languages, I mean, that was, years ago, and I definitely think they're a little bit more popularized now. But, I mean, it was our first introduction to being able to name what our love language is and really thinking about how to love someone based upon their love language and really identifying that a lot of times we love people based upon our love language. And so, I mean, I think that was a big takeaway for me, just really thinking about that and still having to be very intentional around that. I mean, it's so easy for me to be like, oh, like I would appreciate this or this would be great. But having to check myself at times and be like, okay, yes, I would, but like, would Donovan appreciate something else more? So I think, that was that one for me. And then the things I wish I would have known before I got married, I mean, definitely I would say some basic questions and things to think about in your marriage as you're prepping for it. Some things that you may have already discussed or had a conversation around, but what was helpful for me was really thinking about some of the nuanced things. Who's going to clean the shower? Like, I was like, oh, never thought to think about that, but yeah, like, not just who's going to clean up, but like who's going to clean what.
We still have, if we look at our joint notes, we still have the list of the chores of who's going to do what, and we still pretty much live by that.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I think in different seasons of life, right, like stuff changes. You're in school now, so there are a few chores I take on as you did when I was in school. So I think things like that, changes. But yeah, for the most part, what we said is what we do.
We still live by it.
So yes, I mean, I think it was really helpful from that standpoint. I wish there would have been more books about sex in marriage. That wasn't something that I think was hit on as much as I would have liked to. And I think that would have brought up some really great conversations, some that we've had now, like being married for 5 years and like reading books that talk about it now, especially from a biblical standpoint. And some that we agree with and some that we question a little bit more. But I think that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. But I think that's a really interesting thing that I felt like was lacking a little bit in marriage books.
All right.
What was it like to go that whole year without sex?
terrible. It was really tough. And for, the people watching, Whitney decided that she wanted us to reset, right? We had obviously had sex before marriage, and she didn't want to go into our marriage with that as the habit, right? Mm-hmm.
I felt that I was growing spiritually, and it was something that I wanted to shift and change for me. And I remember having a conversation with Donovan where it was like, this is what I feel like I need to do. And, if that is not something you can commit to, I understand, but I have to do this for me.
It was hard. It was tough. It was really tough. And it's not like I didn't understand why it was happening. And it's not like I didn't agree that it should happen. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to make an excuse, but I was a 24-year-old man who had grown accustomed to having sex. Mm-hmm. Right? And to go a whole year, also going back to things being out of my control. Mm-hmm. Right?
Maybe that's why that year was so doom for you. Now that I think about it, maybe that's
that why. On top. I mean, it didn't help. It didn't help. Yeah, I mean, I forgot all about it actually, which is interesting because something that was like such a difficulty for me for a whole year, I didn't even think about it that we had done it, and it's interesting because my mentee hit me about something similar. And he asked from the standpoint of, does that mean if you disagree on it, does that mean you're not equally yoked? Mm. And the way I talk to him is, from a real standpoint, and then also like what it means from a spiritual standpoint. I was like, just because that isn't what you came up with and something that you were automatically on board with, doesn't mean that you're not growing at the same rate. Spiritually, one, you're a 20-something-year-old man. Like, these are things that are human temptations and desires, right? And this is something that's important to her in this moment from a spiritual standpoint. I talked, and then I said, we went through a similar thing. It didn't mean that we were unequally yoked. We were dealing with different things that were impeding our spiritual growth, right? I stopped drinking, right? That wasn't something that was stopping you from your spiritual growth in that moment. Doesn't mean that we were unequally yoked. Our journeys were different. Now we're both going in the same direction, and we're supporting each other in the things that are important to us in our spiritual growth. Right,
and I mean, we weren't perfect in that year. We didn't do a whole 365 days. But I know it was definitely something that we were able to have dialogue around, have conversation around, and really be able to say like, okay, yep, like we messed up. This is what that means for us, and this is like how we want to reset, restart, and do something differently to not like end up in the same boat.
But I also started to realize like my selfishness in the moment. Like, this is something that she really wants, and I'm making it so hard on her. Even though it's hard on me, like I'm transferring that difficulty right to her, and this is something that she sees as important and wants to be a better person, grow closer to God. Like, I'm impeding this. If you can have open, honest conversations about sex, about money, these things in your engagement period, that opens it up for, you being able to effectively communicate during your marriage.
Yeah. Well, we got to get ready to go to sleep.
Your boy got to get up early. But I enjoyed this conversation.
I would say, one, I hope that it was helpful to get to know some insight side info about us and like how we got here. But then also I think there are some key things that will be helpful as you are planning your wedding, as you are planning your marriage, and really thinking about how to set your relationship up in a way that will build a really strong foundation. All right, we're going to sign on out now.
From the Williams.
With love. Catch y'all next time.
Take it easy.